Itachi Uchiha betraying the Akatsuki is always an idea implanted into the fans' minds by many things, such as him always being implied to only work with them for intel gathering, and Obito is always rather weary and scared of Itachi betraying the Akatsuki due to him actually opposing Obito's own ambition in wanting to invade Konoha. Yet Obito yielded in this ambition due to not wanting to test Itachi, since he was aware of Itachi's illness due to how he talks about it with pain. So what would happen if he actually did betray the Akatsuki? How bad does Itachi stomp the Akatsuki, and was Obito rightfully scared of this outcome? So please sit back, grab your popcorn, and listen to me discuss a topic and video I'm actually very proud of, with the structure for this just basically being Itachi's running a gauntlet of tiers within the Akatsuki, starting with the low tier, then the low mid tier, then the mid tier, and then the high tier, and then Obito himself, with Itachi getting a refresh each time. Now with that, where does this narrative actually come from? Why is Itachi so strong to be a threat to Obito, yet he died to Sasuke far before the Kage Summit? And as many of you guys actually do know my opinions and have heard many of my arguments for Itachi, this fight holds no indication to where Itachi actually scales, as he did hold back the entire fight, which is very much evident by many things, such as him being questioned by Zetsu to not be acting like normal, allowing himself to be hit several times, more than ever before, with Obito several chapters later confirming that if Itachi wanted Sasuke dead, he most certainly would be dead, with a storm cutscene actually adding on to this and saying that Itachi just had no rivals, implying that he could also just kill Obito, which is consistent, as I'll come back to later at the end when we get to Itachi versus Obito. But coupled with him not going near his full power, Itachi at this point is so sick and fatigued that he quite literally is blind by the end of the fight, with him never being able to actually see Orochimaru's gigantic 8-headed Hydra despite its color and size, with him only ever judging by the feel of it. It's Orochimaru's Hydra, which is, while in the colored rendition of the manga it has an error on Itachi's eye color, the original manga has Itachi's eyes just pure white, implying that his cataracts are so impaired to a point that they are preventing any accumulation of protein among the eyelids, giving off this white effect that blind people typically have, which Itachi just also has. So considering we still have things such as following their genjutsu clashes, Sasuke comes out marginally worse and much more strained than Itachi, with Itachi also just being able to perception blitz this heavy Sasuke via weaving signs for a clone in the middle of a shuriken clash. And I mean, it's not that bad, he does it to Kakashi as well, okay? A clash in skill, that Itachi has always just thrived at, as shown during his obstacle course training as a kid, being able to blitz and put out the animal pass summon in the war, and just having the best records in the academy clash for all of his shuriken throwing. Many people have noted that while Itachi is superior, Sasuke can still catch him off guard and overwhelm him in a few instances, such as when Sasuke rigged the shuriken and had blades project out, and this would literally just be Itachi not being able to move in the air, and this is made evident by Itachi trying to take damage and convince Sasuke of his power, and he's just slapped him up so far. So we can just also see that Itachi can just perceive the blade as it fires, and he kind of just watches it hit him. Again, due to him not being able to move, even Zetsu makes a note of this, saying, "This is funny, what is it?" It's not like Itachi not to be able to dodge such things, just straight up stating that Itachi wasn't going all out here and would have and could have dodged this. Then here on out, Itachi does have these injuries, which do seem to be annoying hindrance, such as the cut on his leg that made him jump a little late against Sasuke's fireball, but he still shows his superiority by weaving it and then reacting to Sasuke's Chidori, which is faster, with a fireball of his own. So while it is clear that Itachi is superior in this fight, I mean, even if you're skeptical and are unsure, Sasuke's strongest attack in his entire arsenal being the S-class Kirin, which is just the pinnacle of all lightning style ninjutsu, placing it obviously above the deadly Raikiri and any Chidori variant, Itachi just completely tanks this in his V1 Ribcage Susanoo, this being a feat in and of itself, as Sasuke nearly 100 chapters later is having his ribcage being busted up by the Raikage's punches. And here Itachi is just tanking the pinnacle of all lightning style ninjutsu, coming from an opponent who's implied to be greater than any Akatsuki member, which could just be in reference to techniques like this being greater than anything they have to offer, at least in the low tiers. Then Itachi literally has his heart attack and keeps moving, showing his Susanoo endurance being literally until he drops dead. So for any Akatsuki member here, there isn't a "but he can't hold the Susanoo up" type of argument, as he literally holds it up until he drops dead on his face. And yet Itachi does have a 2.5 in stamina for the data books. These stats are of course not externally comparable though, but rather individualistic methods of showing progressions and strong points. So it could just mean that out of all of Itachi's other stats, they're just so great and his stamina is just okay. just not as crazy as his other abilities, which I mean, it may be weird if his stamina was better than like the Totsuka Blade and Yadamir. With that being said, one thing I believe Six noticed, so shout out to him, was Itachi, according to the games, actually scrapped with Kisame, which I'll come back to later, as well as him actually going to give Naruto the Kodoamatsu Kami Crow, just giving Itachi more benefit to his stamina prior to him fighting Sasuke. So I mean, he literally uses Mangekyo to the point of them showing a noticeable difference between the left and right due to his genjutsu clashes, as well as a fatigued before fighting, having to hold back, injured, deathly sick. So I mean, with that, you cannot say Itachi is anywhere near full power here. Where does a normal Itachi scale? No, I'm not referencing a peak prime Itachi. I'm talking more about a normal of beginning of Shippuden Itachi, as one thing I always hear is, what if Itachi was healthy though? And this is kind of disingenuous, as we virtually saw this, such as in the beginning of Shippuden, where Itachi, just with 30% of his chakra and no Mangekyo, which gives him more chakra, is able to use 2 genjutsu clones, a fireball jutsu, with the anime having an even higher interpretation, with several more jutsu such as its Phoenix Flower jutsu that can even hurt Perfect Jinchuriki Killer B in the War Arc, all with him also piercing up and piecing, Kakashi pretty easily, having 30% of his chakra, which is pretty consistent, dare I say, with him being able to, be above most the Akatsuki members, with Itachi just perception blitzing Sharingan Kakashi with just his 3 Tomoe. So that's just never replicated again in the entire series, showing the caliber that Kishimoto wanted Itachi to be, a caliber as put by Sakura, Naruto's greatest enemy. And so now you're saying, well, his stamina sounds pretty good. What's the deal? And how does Itachi go from being this monster and having great chakra to passing out and dying and having a heart attack in probably a few months? And to be honest, I don't believe it's that complicated. And to understand this, we need to understand what are Itachi's symptoms, what illness does Itachi have, and if you look at just the Sasuke fight, it's very hard to determine. But if you include a few other things, you can come to 2 likely options. The first is microscopic polyangiitis, a rare form of systematic vasculitis, and the other being HIV. Yeah, AIDS. I'm not really kidding when I say this. Itachi has to have some sort of autoimmune disease like this, based upon him coughing up blood, but since Obito actually implies he took many different medicines to prolong his life, and MPA isn't really that complicated to treat, AIDS is pretty likely, which is consistent with how he got so much worse in that time, and Kishimoto shows us this after word that Sasuke died to Deidara gets spread. Itachi, knowing the truth, knew his time was finally up and is with Kisame standing out in the rain, potentially even crying with Kisame telling him to come back in so he doesn't get sick. And keep a note of this sickness. Why would this even matter? Why would this basic rain that's never noted to sicken anybody with the common cold worth Kisame telling him this? Well, it's likely due to Itachi's poor immune system, and since he was planning to die, he likely just stopped taking his medications and was unironically extremely messed up from this cold. This giving a direct correlation to what, how he got so much worse and why Edo Itachi seems so different, yet he is having blood and isn't deathly sick. This is literally just because he didn't come back with his cold. He came back just probably some brief unquantifiable time prior to that. We know this to be the case, and many people think, well, for some reason he doesn't even have blood, yet we know characters like Hiruzen still having his old man properties with his new Edo Tensei body. It actually copies the pigment cells that give humans their natural hair color. Uchihas, when revived, had the same ocular nerves linked uniquely to the Uchiha bodies, without the Edo, body initially possessing that, with even a Hashirama obviously having those cells, and every character brought back still have the correct nature affinities, still just straight up implying that the Edo Tensei will change according to the person, making it more accurate. Therefore, Itachi would be brought back in the same manner, just not the one that he fought Sasuke in, So it probably is before this rain encounter as well, and I've brought this argument up before, but I just really need to bring it up here as well. This means that Itachi could scale very close to his Edo Tensei variant, with, just not some of his stamina restrictions, not due to the chakra, but more or less due to his Mangekyo fading, as we know that Kabuto's Edo Tensei having nearly an endless refilling chakra pool, as stated in Kakuzu's data book section. So these MS techniques and fire style ninjutsu would fatigue Itachi much more in the gauntlet against the Akatsuki than it did in Edo, but there still will be many feats that can be used from his Edo version, such as Itachi completely parrying off a stronger Killer B than Sasuke, reacting to over 10 different strikes, which doesn't really get contradicted either, as a weaker Sasuke is also able to do this to a weaker B, and Itachi skills above Kisame, who can do the same, which is interesting, as Sasuke also is stated to never surpass Itachi until EMS, placing him just under this peak, this pre-War Arc tier, where Itachi would be just at its peak, right? Similar to Pain, who whilst fatigued could combat Sage Mode Naruto, a narrative rival able to Kage summit Sasuke, who just pushes those two. Then this kind of just alludes to Itachi being at the peak of Kage summit Sasuke, somewhere around there, and maybe he's relative to EMS Sasuke on a very, very low end, if he's not super sick or whatever. So, we do know that, like, either way, Itachi, neither really going all out, is able to combat KCM1 Naruto, being albeit more suppressed than Naruto is, but Naruto is still talking and stuff. He's pretty casual with this. And this is shown about how he's more suppressed, as when he uses the MS, he could then just blitz characters like Nagato, who could blitz KCM1 Naruto and B at the same time, just implying that this MS is and him not having it, I guess, lack of, is really suppressing him here. So yeah, I know I've been talking for a bit, but I just kind of had to cover the main points, which I'll come back to some more niche stuff later when they are needed. But let's just begin with Itachi taking on the first tier of the Akatsuki members. That's right, tier, and many people can agree in certain ranks of them. So for like low tier, we can have Hidan, Konan, and Kakuzu. Then mid tier we'll have Sasori and Data. Then like upper mid tier we'll have Kisame and Orochimaru, and then the high tier will just be Obito. And I already have a video of him fighting Pain, who he could just fight below Obito. So yeah, I'm just gonna even the playing field a little bit more for the Akatsuki, because obviously Itachi would beat up Konan alone. So we'll just be giving them more than one fighter and just have Itachi regenerating his chakra before each tier. And yeah, before we jump straight in, please consider liking or subscribing, as we out here putting in a lot of work. So by all means, check out more of my work, or at least consider it. But yeah, let's go straight to the low tiers. Hidan, Kakuzu, and Konan shouldn't really be much of a competition for Itachi here, regardless of if you actually think, or if and how you think they could jump Itachi, as each of these combatants are more rivals to Kakashi at best, certainly under the Sannin tier, with Kakashi actually combating and being able to parry off Kakuzu, the strongest of the three, with him being able to react to his ninjutsu such as False Darkness and engage him in hand-to-hand combat, with the anime having him actually engage him for a very long time, being portrayed as nearly equals, with Kakashi never even being forced to use his Kamui, yet Itachi straight up perception blitzes this Kakashi. And while Itachi does train, as stated in the 10-year anniversary guide, there still are other metrics, like Itachi being above Orochimaru. He fear hacks Kakashi so bad, and Kakashi at this point is still implied to be below the Sannin tier, such as like the election for the new Hokage and whatnot, as Jiraiya was chosen twice over Kakashi for that title, with Kakashi being much stronger, yet also being more relative to a Kage summit Sasuke much later, who Itachi is just objectively above no matter which way you take. So Itachi is above Sasuke, or not Sasuke, sorry, but Kakashi. I guess he's above Sasuke too. With Konan being bested by base Jiraiya fairly casually with his oil combo, which is consistent, as all of her best feats are prepped and not really just her raw combat prowess, such as her paper bombs that were used to blow Obito's arm off, and this wouldn't really be a problem for Itachi, as we know Konan is demonstrably slower than Kirin, which I'll get into in a minute. But for this, Itachi can put up his Susanoo faster than Kirin and can block paper bombs very casually via the Yadamir and omnidirectional shield that just allows Itachi to negate any attack via the shield actually responding to any oncoming element, with the nature opposing to it, and then just the force required to just repel or simply mitigate the attack. So these singular bombs, her paper shuriken, and any projectiles, even potentially her paper person of God technique that she used, maybe she could just potentially use it on a much smaller scale. These just really don't do anything to the Yadamir and whatnot, but still, it doesn't really matter, again, as Itachi can counter it. Itachi's shuriken mastery alone could even like best her, at least keep her off his tail to fight the other two, as he could just come back and easily put her away. And he doesn't really, if he doesn't already, with something like a Madarasu or the Totsuka Blade or the Yasuke Beads, or just something like his basic fire style that actually stood at the peak of the clan at the age of just 12, could actually be implied to be the hottest of all fire style according to the 10-year anniversary guide. However, the most concrete method of placing Itachi while sick above the other two, and I suppose Konan again would just be Itachi scaling massively above heavy Sasuke, is that he could actually just perception blitz, which this Sasuke is implied to have a speed that takes away the breath of even the Akatsuki, stating that he could be faster, with many people writing the statement off as just wrong. This probably just isn't the case, as it's contextually referencing these lower end Akatsuki members such as Hidan, Sasori, Data, or Kakuzu. These guys, and the reason I say this, and while all these characters are introduced, he is implied to be a threat beyond them, with him beating Data handily, perception blitzing Sakura, who can keep up with Sasori, and being implied to be just a step above Naruto, who can beat Kakuzu, and still, was still just believed he wasn't on a base 3-Tomoe Sasuke level even after beating Kakuzu. So I mean, Itachi is just clear of these lower members, and I don't really think, you know, the contention will really be here. You know, like similar to Konan, Kakuzu and Hidan will just be dealt with very easily by any of the Mangekyo techniques. Hidan's main talking point is always just how no matter what damage he takes, including, you know, his head being severed, he just won't die, which just won't be relevant here, as Itachi could just use a Matarasu, which will just burn until Hidan is a pile of ashes, and this could just, you know, end Kakuzu as well, potentially even every heart at the once, you know, if he just fires on the back, similar to how Kakashi smashed straight through the water heart, with the Amaterasu just igniting all the hearts if they aren't separated, which just kind of has to be the case, or else they would die instantly. Not that it matters, not, you know, not a single heart would ever be able to counter Itachi's fire style or Tsukiyomi. So now, while many people think Tsukiyomi is a one hit, you know, one and done type move, this is wrong, as Itachi is able to use it on many Bs in his novel. This just could allude to him actually being able to genjutsuing all the hearts at once, and if you don't really think they have the nerves required, he could just piece them up normally. Kakuzu's last hope is an idea brought up a long time ago, and it's the idea that Kakuzu and Itachi move at the same speed in the war arc, with Kakuzu also carrying Nagato, implying that maybe Kakuzu is just as fast as Itachi, and I mean, no. This just can't be true, as we know that Kabuto is likely sending them all at the same speed to the designated areas, so they don't arrive one at a time, back-to-back fashion, where they could just arrive all at once. So this is why so many slower characters and fast characters move at the same speed here in their travel speed, which just is the same case for Itachi and Kakuzu, and it's disingenuous to say otherwise. I mean, another avenue of interpretation is just the fact that we know Kakuzu, the strongest of these low tiers, is able to be caught off guard by the Tokubetsu Jonin, particularly with Alba's crows that even, like, allowed Raido to hit Kakuzu in the face with a black blade, and considering these combo attacks are able to catch Kakuzu off guard, like again, like Kotetsu's water syrup that Kakuzu just walked straight into without ever noticing Kotetsu covering his feet in chakra. I mean, it's just, Kakuzu's a tactician, right? But he's nowhere near Itachi. I mean, Itachi literally did so well in the academy, they had to give him special assignments and simply just gave up in awe with how smart he was. This would be the same intellectual mind who also just constantly uses crows as his main summon. Itachi also is just implied to be, you know, above every one of these characters, just simply in his 3-Tomoe Sharingan or even base. The MS would just definitely be overkill on the basis that Itachi was more than able to work around Kakashi with only having 30% access of his chakra, whilst only being 3-Tomoe. With this chakra decrease from the Mangekyo, and another thing interesting to note is Itachi could actually do more, with the data books implying the technique ends when they're out of chakra, not when they are hit and die. So it's just the Sand Shinobi's body wasn't actually durable enough and only did what he did due to Itachi's chakra being in part. So this is actually more for Itachi's stamina and more power he could actually output in just this 30% body that was already piecing up Kakashi. You could also say that Itachi just using an exploding clone, which Kakuzu does show weariness of bombs like that, even using his diamond morph. So to be honest, you guys get it. Itachi beats all three of the low tiers, and I'm not really sure, you know, if he'd ever have to use the Susanoo. That's probably just overkill, but it doesn't really matter, as he could just get a full refresh for the next round. So if he wants to, he can. So in conclusion, Itachi beats the brakes off Kakuzu, Hidan, and Konan all at once. Moving on to the lower mid tiers, being the artistic duo, and while I'm always a vouch for Deidara being very underrated, with me even once holding the opinion that Sasori was actually stronger, but we know that Sasori for one just has to be below heavy Sasuke, or at least in that tier, at least above the low tier, still being held under Sasuke, and this is shown in a few different things, such as each Akatsuki member, you know, going on to face a member of Team 7. Naruto gets Kakuzu, Sakura gets Sasori, Sasuke gets Deidara, yet Sasuke at this point is just implied to literally perception blitz both base Naruto and Sakura, when both were capable of combating their respective Jinchuriki members, or Akatsuki members, sorry, on a very fair ground, such as like Sakura being able to weave many different attacks and shatter the prized third Kazekage puppet, and Naruto being able to casually divert Kakuzu to then blitz him with the Rasen Shuriken. Yet, you know, following that, we're still just under the impression that Naruto, no matter what, is just inferior to this 3-Tomoe, you know, Sasuke, with Kakashi also implying this, and this is just not even a curse mark, and even Orochimaru sees Naruto's transformation in his 3 tails going into 4, and notes that he's not even in the same league as Sasuke, and that even with the 9 tails power, he expected more. This being the same Sasuke who Deidara is able to actually combat, sort of implying that the league that Deidara is actually in, being just above his partner Sasori, and certainly above the low tiers. And yes, Deidara does state that Sasori is stronger than him, but this is just a lie. And I used to disagree with this argument, saying that in order for Deidara to want Kakashi off him, he needs to be doing this out of a self-preservation for himself and wanting an easier challenge, which may not be the case if he's acting out of power to draw, he's acting out of hand to draw more of Naruto's power out, as that's kind of weird. However, I do actually disagree with the argument now, and for a couple of reasons. First being that Kakashi is just a hindrance due to the Sharingan that Deidara does not enjoy facing, with it being able to see his clay and whatnot, and his reputation as well, with him also just, amping Naruto. This would just be Deidara just wanting Kurama to come out in full form, at least a form where Deidara believes it could probably survive a C2, or maybe just one of the bombs that he used on the Three Tails, or even Flip Turtle Island, which was a C2, or even the C3 bomb, which is just the pinnacle of all explosions as implied by the third data book, which Naruto could just not do in base, meaning that Deidara would just kill Naruto, causing Kurama to spawn somewhere else. So you could just chop it up saying that Deidara, isn't really caring about his self-well-being and is just taking pride on how he actually captured Gaara and just didn't care what kind of power boost Naruto got, with him just being confident in him being able to take him down and wanting him to get stronger so he could actually knock him out with a stronger bomb instead of having to fight him in taijutsu to capture him. So considering this blatant showing of fighting a stronger opponent and just having better feats, even taking down Gaara, who by virtue of being the Kazekage would be above Chio and hence Sasori, making Deidara just stronger via feats. This just leaves this one that there's so many avenues that could just be argued around this statement. So Deidara is just blatantly above him. But the problem is, what happened when they last fought? What happened when Deidara last fought Itachi? I mean, Itachi was just above. And while you could see Deidara got stronger by virtue of him owning his eye and fighting others, we know that the third data book mentions how Sasuke overcame the distance disadvantage via the mastery of his Sharingan, building up to a narrative of Sasuke having to overcome something via furthering his Sharingan, which Itachi has already basically just topped out, as he's literally the Sharingan guy, just implying that Itachi would be above heavy Sasuke. And I mean, this is just, again, demonstrably shown through feats and narrative. And Deidara also just only has one real avenue of being able to actually combat Sasuke, and this is just via his bomb's explosive velocities, never really his raw combat speed. This is cemented with Sasuke being able to actually cover the great distances between them, with Deidara only ever reacting in the very last second when Sasuke slows down and tries to strike, and is already very close, with this sort of being actually supported when they were closer, and Deidara just blew a C1 up in his own face to escape due to him not being able to obviously match Sasuke, and Deidara is able to overcome this distant disadvantage as well via certain plans such as his clay clone to catch Sasuke. Now, to be fair to Deidara, I suppose we should talk about, what kind of disadvantages he faced. And first and the largest of all the disadvantages would be Sasuke's Sharingan, that just allows him to perceive every time Deidara was molding chakra, where they were, see him in color, how much stakes, how much chakra was in them and whatnot. He could see the microscopic bombs in color. He could, have the precog, which Itachi could just do as well. So, Deidara's largest disadvantage that he ever had to face is he's going against an even worse disadvantage here with a more mastered Sharingan. And I never really heard this brought up and how he actually has to fight, like in character, but this is shown many times over with him actually engaging Sasuke too many times, either size him up or test him, never using his eye goggle, never using his high speed bursts that were able to completely weave all of Gaara's sand, and most importantly, never using his flight speed to swoop down and fight Sasuke in that way. Now, I'm sure some of you guys are probably saying, what could this possibly do to help Deidara beat Sasuke? And actually quite a bit. We know that Deidara's flight speed is very fast, even rivaling Onaki's, but how does it compare here? How does the flight speed compare to someone like heavy Sasuke? And we have a direct metric for this. So look at his fast birds in the Gaara fight. Look at them. These are the ones that are noted to be faster, and then look at these that he fires off at Akatsuki when revived. Same bombs, right? So Deidara fires these off, one of his fastest bombs, right, in Akatsuki's face, and then you can see upon them exploding, his mud golem can come up, meaning that he can actually react to these explosive velocities. Yet when Deidara was flying around and fighting Onaki, Akatsuki could barely even perceive their movements. This is why whenever he was using his flight speed, it was actually able to do so well, and as well as it did against someone like Gaara. And it could have just done very, very well against Sasuke, as Sasuke gets blitzed by the bomb's explosive velocities, which means that it could actually potentially, be a threat to a very sick Itachi, but nothing more. And this obviously, is his peak speed, meaning that Itachi still just holds a demonstrable advantage no matter what avenue you take, with him, even while sick, being arguably above Deidara's peak speed. Now with that being said, Itachi's arsenal also is just leagues better than Sasuke's, especially in terms of long-range ninjutsu such as his Amaterasu, which would just take, a glance and would just evaporate Deidara off the bird, or even Tsukiyomi, that would literally just drop him down due to its potency. And yes, while Deidara could take Sasuke's genjutsu that was able to stop Tsukiyomi, we know this is just either due to Itachi holding back the potency due to him equaling out the EMS Sasuke Sharingan genjutsu, along with this just being a very unreliable feat on its own, with even the data book supporting it, just alluding to the Sharingan aiding him in resistance, which should just be true, as without the second in data book, you can also just imply that resisting the caster would be impossible, and Tsukiyomi would just one-tap Deidara here. Or the other argument I guess you could use is how Zetsu notes that he was never hit with Tsukiyomi, he just broke through it, which could imply a threshold between the ocular nerves and when they're injected with chakra, and when the brain, particularly all 5 senses, are actually covered by Tsukiyomi. And maybe Sasuke just broke through it before it was fully taken a hold, and thus just unquantifiable, this way. And Itachi still just having higher assertions from his Genjutsu Clash, a technique that virtually allows, a guarantee the win would just be Amaterasu, as Sasuke states that, like Kirin, Amaterasu cannot be evaded, which would simply just imply that every fighter Sasuke has seen, dodging Amaterasu just isn't happening, which would just include Deidara. And it also gets worse. However, if Itachi does bring out his trump card to either avoid getting hit by C2 or C3, or the Iron Sand, which this could obviously just remain untouchable with the Yatamir, and could just, fire out the Yasuke beads, which would just snipe Deidara out of the air. And while many people don't really know about the Yasuke beads, these beads, while suppressed, offered a third of the power necessary to evaporated Chobaku Tensei, meaning that at bare minimum with a low ball, saying that they didn't vaporize it and the Yasuke beads were only 33%, we know that's still an insane destructive feat, and could actually be argued even higher, as this version of the Susanoo was very suppressed, as you can see, not even in the full V3 variant, along with Itachi only using 3 when we are made aware he could use 4 if he wanted to, as shown against Kabuto, meaning that he actually could destroy 44% of the Chobaku Tensei, and actually much more, since he did vaporize it instead of just breaking and crumbling it. So pretty crazy. So yeah, I mean, these Yasuke beads are probably just one-shotting Deidara and likely Sasori, along with his Iron Sand, to be honest. The Iron Sand's best durability showing isn't really Sakura's punch, but it actually could just be how Chiyo implies it to be greater than Shukaku, which still just isn't anything to a Chobaku Tensei, which is literally built to hold Bijou, and actually could contain an 8-tails Kurama, which means that it would also likely just blow straight through this sand. And I will say, Sasori does just, stylistically speaking, has a very good match, or at least better than Deidara's, but does just get outclassed via stats. But it's even arguable if he could actually get Genjutsu'd or not, with most physical attacks not really working due to how Sasori's body is able to just piece itself back together, with him not feeling any pain whatsoever. So Itachi, would just likely have to use an MS technique to put Sasori down definitively, but this just really isn't a problem considering how much better Itachi's stamina is here. With the massive speed advantage being presented, he would also just never really get hit by anything Sasori has, no matter the circumstances. So coupled with the idea that Itachi being able to actually, just use the Susanoo if he's pressured, what can either Sasori or Deidara do? And while I do think some combos like a C2 Dragon covered in Iron Sand would be cool, it's still just going to get blown up by the Yasuke beads or a Amaterasu or something like that. Or even just considering the speed disparity, maybe even Itachi could simply ease Nanami Sasori if it push came to shove, as we know Sasori is very afflicted in nature due to his puppet self, and that's just another win con to add. So yeah, I think it's made pretty clear to us that Itachi is just a step above these two, and would actually clear the mid tier, probably mid diff, especially if acting with the intent to kill, as opposed by the idea of him actually betraying the Akatsuki. He's not going to be holding back in any regard. And I mean, this shouldn't really be that contentious. We have a 30% clone of Itachi with, this blitz level below his peak speed, being able to, with the MS active, being able to nearly, just catch Sakura with his fireball, a Sakura who could just easily weave Sasori. So regardless, I know people are going to disagree with what's presented, but you could just argue that even if you combined this tier with the low tier all at once, it wouldn't really matter to the outcome. And no, there isn't a teamwork though argument to even be made. Past that, we have the upper mid tiers, Orochimaru and Kisame being the two shark and serpent monsters of the Akatsuki respectively. And also, side note, an idea sort of lost in the sauce was the idea that the Akatsuki represented different types of monsters. Like you have the shark monster, snake monster, puppet monster, and Itachi the human monster. A cool theme. But anyway, moving on to how Oro and Kisame actually stacked up. And this is where you reach like the three Tomoe level threats, as I like to put it. And the reason being is that Itachi actually defeated Orochimaru with a basic 3 Tomoe Genjutsu, with Itachi's 3 Tomoe Sharingan silhouette being what Orochimaru thinks about when he states his inferiority to Itachi. Kisame is no exception to this either, as we actually know that he's implied to be below Itachi either by himself, stating that he probably couldn't beat Jiraiya, but Itachi certainly could, even questioning why they would even possibly retreat when they have Itachi's power. But both the novels and games corroborate this idea as well, with Itachi fighting Kisame in the game with his 3 Tomoe, and as soon as the MS came out, Kisame just kind of gave up, not really wanting to test it. The novel also just has Kisame questioning if Itachi's aura alone is suppressing his power. So yeah, pretty crazy stuff for Itachi. However, what's the difference between the 3 Tomoe to MS? Sure, it grants a speed amp, but how significant of an amp in Itachi's case? And to answer this, it's rather simple. Itachi, while in 3 Tomoe, was actually able to hold his own and be very hyper relatively, even holding back KCM1 Naruto, with both trying to just talk to Itachi and scaling above B concretely, with Nagato then getting amped, being able to utterly blitz KCM1 Naruto and B at the same time, with Itachi's MS then blitzing the same Nagato, ripping his arm off and the chameleon's tongue off, and then just blitzing Nagato with the Totsuka blade. And yes, there could be an argument that Itachi's difference in Sharingan evolution would just be a blitz level as shown here, and this isn't really that inconsistent. Or is it crazy to say that Itachi could blitz Kisame and Orochimaru at its full power? And I mean, to be honest, probably not. The chapter 364 synopsis statement mentions how the strongest man in the Akatsuki pursues Naruto, with this argument having a few different routes. First being Pain, who just accepted the mission to hunt Naruto, and second would actually be Itachi, which would just be because Itachi actually catches Naruto in the woods to talk to him about Sasuke, with the chapter title being called Pursue Itachi. Now, a counter argument I once made, and unironically was used in a famous debate over a topic, would be the chapter 365 synopsis statement that says, Itachi, sheer coincidence leads Naruto to an unexpected enemy. What does Itachi have in store for Naruto this time? End quote. And while at first glance this just means that Itachi popped out a coincidence, and this doesn't really work. And if you look at the text, you'll notice how it punctuates after Itachi and then says sheer coincidence leads Naruto. See where I'm going with this? Sheer coincidence leads Naruto, and there's just this level of ambiguity of what Itachi's goals are, meaning that he has some goals and Itachi isn't there by sheer coincidence, but Naruto runs into him by coincidence. So Naruto going on that path would be coincidental. So this just sort of solidifies how Itachi is at the peak of the Akatsuki, no matter what interpretation you really take. Even if he's below Pain or whatever from this, he's still in the argument for him being the strongest in the Akatsuki. Hence, probably a difference between these fighters being a blitz level probably is a little more consistent. You even have large debates on who would win, Itachi or Pain, both being just narrative rivals and far greater than the superior forms of the Sannin, with Itachi also just having a rivalry with Obito, which I'll get into in a minute. So it's pretty clear that nobody, no matter what route you really take, Itachi is on a higher tier and should just be above both of them individually, probably by a significant margin based on the Sharingan evolution scaling I mentioned earlier. So I'll be honest, the only way this works is if Orochimaru has the two Edo Kage, as he alone is entirely inferior to Itachi, with his 8-headed Hydra, a serpent stated to actually surpass Oro in power, just gets completely blitzed around by the Totsuka blade, with Itachi, just completely blitzing Orochimaru as soon as he emerges as well. So the Edo Kage are cool, and they can just add pressure, allowing Kisame to be the main unit, which is the only way these two could possibly win. Orochimaru and his summons are very strong, as they're able to press Hiruzen and pressure him to use the Reaper Death Seal. This being the same, Hiruzen was able to rival Tobirama in the War Arc when revived, and despite being revived from this fight, was also able to be called the strongest of the 5 Kage by Kabuto, and just being the strongest of all the great nations, standing atop the world, with the Shinobi mini guide also just saying he's at the peak of the world. So they definitely could offer a lot of pressure. Now, while Amaterasu can negate the regen, Itachi's basic fire style simply won't be enough, as we know that Tobirama's water wall was actually able to stop Hiruzen's dragon flame, which is stated in the anime profile guides to be the strongest strongest of all fire style. So Itachi will have to, lock in at least a little bit, which should, have been obvious. So if the Susanoo comes out, however, things like Deep Forest Emergence would just get sliced up, kind of like the Hydra heads, and none of their ninjutsu could actually work, whereas Itachi has the very easy option to just seal them all, being with his deadly Totsuka blade that would allow him to stab and encapsulate them into a world of drunken dreams, with the Totsuka blade literally just blitzing every person it's ever actually been attempted on. So it's completely weightless as well, so it's not slow. I don't know why people think that. So could Kisame actually take advantage of this pressure and deal serious damage to Itachi or even the Susanoo? And probably not, as we've already have a pre-established speed advantage, and Itachi is just already in his Susanoo, so regardless of him focusing on other opponents or not, he's still probably not going to get capitalized on by Kisame. With the only way this ever happens would be like if Kisame uses a very large water bubble, and even then we just don't know what would happen. All this form is implied to lack any weakness. There just isn't anything he could really do except absorb, and could he absorb the Susanoo? We don't really know. Could Amaterasu evaporate the water? We don't really know. Also, considering he's in the Susanoo and it counters all things via the Yodamir, he could also just maps the absorption properties with that Samehada has and just kind of negate them with his Yodamir. Even the large scale water styles such as the Shark Bomb outclass Itachi in terms of ninjutsu. It's fairly irrelevant as the Totsuka blade is ethereal and could just poke straight through them, with the bomb not really being able to do anything. Kisame also has to avoid looking at Itachi directly in the eyes or else it's over via Tsukiyomi or demonic illusion shackling stakes. So when you really look at it, Orochimaru and Kisame both do lose to Itachi, and while I do think the difficulty is much higher than Deidara and Sasori, it's still nothing that's going to have Itachi on his knees at the end of the fight. Probably just a really tough mid, maybe high diff fight if you're being really generous. Now, the next opponent, being far stronger than both Kisame and Orochimaru, is Pain, and I actually think it's almost dishonest of me to talk about Pain versus Itachi here, as I think it's a very heated match, and I don't want to just gloss over it. And if you really do want to learn more about the intricacies of this fight, and my opinion of that fight, then please watch my Itachi versus Pain video. I mean, it's literally 40 minutes and goes into everything, so I obviously can't include that here. So if you think Itachi wins, as I do, then, we'll advance him on to Obito, and if not, just say that Pain puts Itachi down, and if Itachi did betray the Akatsuki, he would kill Hidan, Kakuzu, Deidara, Sasori, Konan, Kisame, and Orochimaru, and just loses to Pain, giving him maybe a little bit of a tough fight. With most of the Akatsuki's prize secrets also now just being out, sort of alluding to why Obito was so scared of this possibility. But could it go even further? Say Itachi does beat Pain. Could he beat Obito? Well, in my opinion, I think it's already been established what could happen if these two actually fought based on the narrative rivalry that's been laid out. And while I do think this could deserve its own video, I want to talk about it here and just go a little more in depth than what I was originally going to do and just kind of bring up the main points instead of dragging it out at a later date. Now, as weird as it sounds to actually state the winner before the arguments are made, I want to say that I think Obito does win, or at least wins more times than Itachi does, and that shouldn't really be much of a contention, and we'll get into that, but I really just want to address some points where people try to make it a stomp on either side, which just isn't the case. This should have been made very clear with how Obito seemingly treats Itachi's formidability, such as him going after Sasuke to groom him as the next Akatsuki monster, literally the second he heard Itachi was dead, with Obito also never really once attacking Konoha due to the pact that him and Itachi once had, which was expanded on quite a bit in the novels, with the main notes for that encounter being that when they first meet, Itachi talks to him and he talks to Obito and notices how he uses Kamui to weave around certain cameras, meaning that Itachi knows of this jutsu. Then they both escape to a path lined by cedar trees with a nearly full moon, with the road leading to Tsunegakure in sight, and then Obito mentions how Itachi is now aware of his hate for Konoha and the Uchiha. Then the narrator notes how Itachi wouldn't let Obito take revenge on Konoha, and then follows it up with "I have conditions," with him cutting straight through Obito's attitude. Quote, "I'll help you get revenge on the Uchiha clan, and in exchange you don't lay a hand on the village or Sasuke Uchiha," end quote. Then, one thing that most people always leave out is how Obito was unable to actually hide his shock at how forceful Itachi is. The definition of forcefulness being, quote, "physical energy or intensity," and then his face devoid of all expressions, Itachi offered the answer, quote, "If you refuse this request, you and I are enemies." And then Obito kind of just had to ask, "But could you kill me?" And Itachi rebutted this by saying, "It's not a matter of if I can or not. I will kill you. Then the two shinobi acknowledge each other as opponents with no more bloodlust remaining in their auras. So how does this get Itachi close to Obito? Could Obito just be messing with Itachi and him acknowledging Itachi just be more of an ideological reason rather than a power reason? And to be honest, probably not. We know it was Itachi's forcefulness that likely silenced both their auras, and if you go to their first ever encounter when Obito slaughtered Itachi's teammates, Itachi was silenced by Obito's wordless pressure, quote, perhaps his instincts sensing the difference between his own abilities and those of this man, end quote. So here we have these auras being power correlated, and Obito is just so far above, child Itachi, and now this preteen Itachi is at least strong enough to pose a threat to Obito, slicing straight through his aura and whatnot, maybe posing a threat on just like a minor level. And if you really try to assert anything too far past that, it kind of just gets arbitrary and can't really stand on its own. Just only mean that Itachi could fight Obito and not get beaten very easily. However, could we compare this to other statements that Kishimoto tried to establish, for this rivalry? What happens when you really just lay it along with those? And to be honest, Obito is just in awe that Itachi would just leave a post-mortem trap, but as he puts it, leave it to Itachi to do so. With Obito also stating in his head, thankfully Itachi didn't know everything about me or else I'd be dead. Talking about the Amaterasu trap. So maybe you could say this is Izanagi because Itachi has seen Kamui, or just use the data book to imply Kamui, and maybe Itachi just didn't know the intricacies of it. But either way, if this was said aloud, I think skepticism would just remove any substantial argument. But since it's made in his head, this straight up just means that if Itachi didn't know everything about Obito, knew his full arsenal, he would be dead. Then you have this Obito mentioning that now that Itachi's dead, the Leaf Village is no longer off limits, which this would just refer to Obito trying to honor the pact, and Obito's not an honorable man, so this would just be out of sheer respect and maybe some fear for Itachi. So you notice the theme so far, it's like we have so many good solid narrative concepts that Itachi and Obito are rivals, and it's just, that's about it. Asserting Itachi is above most of these, is sort of disingenuous, and the only time it's ever really stated that one is above the other is like 6-year-old Itachi, and yeah, no shit. This just doesn't really change as much, to be honest, as, in the Naruto Road to Ninja movie, Obito states that even in any world, Itachi is always a nuisance, maybe implying that Obito wants to invade Konoha, but Itachi's always stopping him. But the canonicity of this movie is questionable, due to how it does have to actually fit in the timeline. But we know that Kishimoto at least worked on it or cared enough to make a whole mini manga on it leading up to this movie, which you can actually get with Naruto Manga Box Set 3. So take what you will. Another questionably canon statement would be the Storm Games having Obito stating that Itachi had no worthy adversaries, but again, it's a Storm game, so it's more supplementary stuff, with the manga and novel being the only real concrete pieces here. And while some don't really like the novel due to it being, never really being in the manga, where if you just go to Obito's recalling, it actually does just fit fine, and I don't really get the contention. We just get this one panel, it's a well-lit forest, which with the statement Itachi just made a proposal, and the novel supports this by mentioning the nearly full moon lighting everything up. And now if you take Itachi's recalling, it's much better with them using the exact same words in their discussion, with the scenario just being a little more vivid, solidifying the novel scenery, with the acknowledgement portion just happening right after the part that's actually shown, leaving room for it to be there. So I think you can make this, consistent as well, especially if you subscribe to Obito just being somewhat below KCM2 level, as noted with the entire narrative for Naruto needing to master the Nine Tails, and Minato just being compared to KCM2, by Kakashi, and we just have Itachi above KCM1, and his 3-tome we nearly at a full, nowhere near his full power, and he could just be, in a similar league, and just, he does have so many different win cons against Obito, and Obito just kind of has Kamui and some assertion advantages via scaling, above Itachi, generally, not the other way around. So I mean, Itachi's saving grace really is just his ability to potentially kill Obito via unknown means, and we aren't really sure what this means. So you could imply that he used Izanagi, and if it wasn't for that, he would still be dead. And I mean, I don't really mind the Kamui arguments, the Izanagi arguments. I think you could really say either way, but applying the data book to support the Kamui arguments is a little awkward, considering how it says that no one knows his ability, yet we know that Itachi knew of the kunai, knew of Kamui as he used it to actually evade the cameras. Data saw the phasing aspect and even capitalized on it via having him plant mines. Pain and hence Konan knew about the passive and intangibility and the timers presented due to the Rainmaker Jutsu that Pain activated in anticipation for Obito's rival of the Rain Village. So just kind of testing how long the drops actually go through. This is how he gets the timers of how long Kamui can last, and how he actually tells Konan about it later, which I have talked about before, and I do have a short on that. So we just know that by some metric, Itachi kills Obito. We don't really know how. This is pretty nuclear, to be honest, this statement. It just means that Obito knows Itachi can kill him. It's just, I don't really know how. One win con that could be brought up, for the sorcery section would be like Izanami, as Obito is also very conflicted, but in conclusion, I don't think Itachi beats Obito, and it's more that Obito wins 7 out of 10 times, and Itachi can maybe take him maybe 3, maybe 4 times if you're being generous. And I mean, if you go with this, then no shit, Obito didn't want Itachi to betray the Akatsuki. Look at what happened. So yeah, I do really love this concept of the, of him running the Akatsuki's fate, and no one ever has actually done this, so I thought it'd be an interesting idea just to get some misconceptions out of the way of Itachi being middle tier Akatsuki, and whatnot. And this adds some validity to Kishimoto's writing and the narrative that he wanted to desperately convey. So yeah, if you guys did enjoy this, or you did learn something, or heck, maybe you just enjoyed chilling out and listening to Naruto content, then please by all means subscribe. It helps me out more than you possibly realize. And of course, like the video and comment your thoughts on what you want to see next. And I literally read almost every single comment and respond to nearly every one. So as always, love you guys. It's also like 3 a.m, so please subscribe.